Chopping a nucleus at high vacuum and phaco power is associated with many problems. Formation of cavitation bubbles block surgeon's view. Chops might not propagate posteriorly and remain incomplete. Occlusion is necessary for chop, hence surgery is unavoidable. High vacuum can lead to inadvertent occlusion by delicate iris tissue. Various phaco techniques are available, but the risk of endothelial damage and posterior capsule rupture still persists. Occlusion with high vacuum and stabilization of the nucleus after embedding the phaco tip are necessary in phaco chop. So a technique which eliminates high vacuum and occlusion becomes a necessity in this modern era of refractive cataract surgery. With the zero stress technique, cataracts can be safely removed without vacuum, and they include the entire spectrum of cataracts from the very soft to the very hard. No force is applied to displace the nucleus, hence this produces no stress to the zonular apparatus, which gives the name the zero stress phaco technique. Here a cataract of medium hardness is seen. Capsulorhexis and hydrodissection are performed. A groove is made in the central nucleus core. By further sculpting, it is converted into a crater. The depth of the crater is about 70 to 80% of nuclear thickness. The surgeon has already determined the nuclear thickness during biometry. A routine phaco tip has a diameter of 0.9 mm. Hence, each step of the crater can be considered to be of 1 mm, and the depth should be of 3 to 4 such steps. Machine parameters are now set to 0 flow, 0 vacuum and 0 power. The chopper is then introduced below the rhexis margin under direct visualization, and it reaches to the end of the harder core nucleus. Phaco tip at the crater is used to stabilize the nucleus, and chopper is then brought towards the center. Once both instruments reach close to each other, they are separated and a nice clean chop is achieved, which travels the full length of the undivided nucleus. The lens is then rotated and similar chopping maneuver is carried out on the two nuclear halves. Chopping is carried out till the nucleus is divided into pieces that are small enough to be emulsified easily. Each fragment is then aspirated and emulsified within the capsular bag. A mature cataract is another challenging situation where this technique works equally well. A crater is made in the nucleus core. Phaco chop and zero vacuum is then carried out, and the nucleus is divided into two symmetrical halves. Further chop is then carried out to make smaller pieces which can be emulsified easily within the capsular bag. Does the technique work for hard nucleus? Comes the next obvious question. In this cataract, a nucleus of grade 4 hardness is seen. Sculpting through this cataract reveals sharp edges as if cutting through marble. A crater is then created and the chopper is carefully introduced under the rhexis margin. The nucleus is then split by bringing the chopper to the phaco tip and separating them. The hardest central core has been removed already, hence the fracture line will propagate posteriorly instead of dispersing elsewhere. After rotating and chopping, two nuclear halves are created, divided through the posterior plate. As the hard nucleus is brittle and leathery, the pieces are chopped with a snap but are still joined together by leathery fibers which need further chopping. And finally, the ultimate test for this technique. Here is a cataract with a small undilating pupil and grade 5 nucleus, shining in all its splendor. The anterior capsule is stained with trypan blue. Pupil is expanded with the help of a 8-point pupil expander. Central sculpting is then started, creating a groove which is then converted into a crater. Phaco chop is then initiated by the chopper and the phaco tip at the two ends of the nuclear core. All parameters are at 0 at this stage. Nucleus is then split into two halves. Further chopping is done till smaller pieces are created. A large central space was already created, making the aspiration and emulsification of the nuclear pieces much predictable and safer. So it can be concluded that this method provides an easy alternative to chop. Technique is suitable for all densities of cataract without using high vacuum. Consistent performance every time and safe to anterior segment structures. Short learning curve for an experienced phaco surgeon and no extra instrumentation required. The same phaco setup can be used. And above all, zero stress to the zonials.